all bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you that we can be here today. Please help us so that we can, even if we don't agree with this, even in the slightest, please help us to at least open our ears to the possibilities and help us to say whatever we're going to say and do whatever we're going to do for your glory. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen.
Okay, so I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to start, so I'm just going to try to start from the beginning, like the very beginning. So if we turn to Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, God said, "Let there be light." And if we move down to verse 6, God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So it says in the Bible that we should always have at least 2 or 3 witnesses for something we're trying to say. So I'm going to flip over to, for one, Psalms 148, and it will once again talk about the firmaments above and below the waters. And when you look at a firmament, if you turn to Psalms 19:1, it will talk about how the heavens declare the glory of God's work and the firmament declares his handiwork. That exact verse was put on Wernher von Braun, who was a NASA scientist. He put that on his gravestone.
He was not only a NASA scientist, he was the first person who was in charge of the NASA space program. He was the progenitor of that program.
And if we turn to Job 37, verse 18, Job was arguing with God about why he was given all these turmoils, and God began questioning him about a whole bunch of things he had done. And one thing he said was, "Did he spread out the sky, which is strong, and molten like a looking glass?" If you look at a picture of a looking glass, it's a literal, like, half, it's a half, And if you'll find the strength of glass if you look in Revelation 21 verses 18, 21, it talks about how glass is used in foundations and like it's used for building because it's very, very strong.
What is a firmament?
What?
What is a definition of a firmament? Read it loudly.
Yeah.
Support, prop, stay, equivalent to strengthen and support.
So firmament, the dictionary, I don't know if that's Oxford or Webster's, is the vault of the sky. You guys know what a vault is?
Yeah.
So it's equivalent to a dome. That's the assertion.
Another thing we can look at that covers both the firmament and the shape of the earth, we can turn to Isaiah 40, verse 22. I'm actually going to turn there because I don't want to quote this one wrong. But it speaks of both the shape being excuse me.
Your parents brought this verse up last night. Your parents brought this verse up last night.
Oh yeah.
Isaiah 40:22.
Isaiah 40:22 reads, "It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretches out the heavens as a curtain, that spreadeth out as a tent to dwell in." When we look at that verse, we see a circle of the earth, and people will say, well, circle, they're just talking about the globe itself. They're not talking about a circle literally as a 2D object. What?
Say that
Like
again.
a globe, people who believe in the globe, they'll assert that when they said circle, he meant as a sphere, not as a circle in the literal definition of just a circle. But if we turn to Isaiah 22, verse 18, what we'll read is that he shall violently turn and toss thee like a ball into a large country. There shalt thou die, and there the chariots of the glory shall be the shame of the Lord's house.
What's the import of that distinction?
So what that shows is Isaiah wasn't speaking, he knew the difference between a circle and a ball or a spherical type object. He's not saying he knows the difference between a circle and a ball, a spherical object. That asserts that he didn't intend circle to be a sphere. He intended circle to be a circle, because it says in the Bible that God, he's not saying things to confuse you. He's telling you, if you look at 1 Corinthians 14 verse 33, it says God doesn't tell you confusing stuff. He says it as it is. And when Isaiah is asserting in the Bible, when he's asserting it's a circle, he's not asserting it's a sphere. So lots of people say, so if it's a circle, what is this circle doing? It's just sitting there. How is a circle going to work? What we're going to see, it says that there's water above the firmament. So to me, that automatically, I think of
Where does it say that?
it's what?
Where does it say there's water above the firmament?
Genesis 1 verses 6
Specifically,
and 7.
what does it say?
It says God separated the waters from above the firmament and below the firmament.
Okay.
But I think of kind of like a, what do you call those, like a aquarium type, like fish. I think of a fish like aquarium where they have that box and there's water above. So imagine it's in a fish. So it's not, the bottom is not sitting on the bottom, because it says there's water below as well. So if that's true, then we're gonna have to figure out what would the foundation be. So it talks about the four corners of the earth, which would be, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, if we turn to Job 9 verse 6, we'll find Job once again, and he's talking about the pillars of the earth. And if we get into detail about that, there are supposedly 4 pillars, and those 4 pillars are evenly spread out underneath this circle that he's suggesting, that he's saying is there. So if we turn to 9:6, it'll read, which shaketh the earth out of her place, and the pillars thereof tremble. So what it's saying is underneath there would be these pillars. But people are like, what are these pillars just floating around too? But it says in Chronicles 16:30, the world is stable and it will not be moved. So that suggests that on the bottom of this, as I've said, like a fish, like just water in like a water, it's fastened by pillars to the bottom, whatever that is supposed to be, the bottom of this water. And underneath there's the water in between the pillars and the foundation of the earth. Then above the firmament, like a molten looking glass, there would be the waters above. And this can start to make more sense if we look into verses like when there was a flood and it talks about God opening the windows of heaven and the water pouring in. That can make sense if we think of the waters above and the waters below. Or when he says
what would the windows be to?
It says the firmament is as of heaven, so
Break it down. Makes sense. So if God's opening the windows, what are the windows in?
they would be the firmament itself. You would be opening up